Welcome, everyone. I'm Inna Horvath, a product marketing manager at Panopto, and I'm thrilled to have you join us today for how video learning shapes student success. While we give everyone a minute or two to jump in, just a quick housekeeping notes. If you have any questions during the session, please feel free to drop them in the Q&A panel here in Zoom. We'll have a dedicated Q&A time at the end. Also, the webinar is being recorded and we'll send you out the replay right after the event. We know that video has become absolutely central to how students learn, but there's often a gap between what institutions think is happening and what's actually happening in students' study sessions. So we are going to start by presenting our wonderful speakers. We are fortunate to have Shaun Searle and Ian Paice, who bring very different but complementary perspectives to this conversation. Now, first, Shaun Searle, who leads digital learning team at the University of Portsmouth and has been at the forefront of transforming how his institution thinks about video learning. And Ian Paice, Panopto's chief customer officer, who works with hundreds of institutions globally and sees patterns across the entire higher education landscape. So let's start with you, Shaun. Could you give us a bit more context about your role at Portsmouth and what sparked your interest in rethinking how video is being produced, kept? Go ahead.
Okay, thank you. Yes, hello, glad to be here. So first of all, I should say that while my role is that of digital team leader at the University of Portsmouth, I'm very much based in the digital landscape. My background is that of teaching. That's my trade. And so prior to joining the university, I taught at a senior level within the UK school system and led IT in a number of schools for about a decade. And the reason I sort of say that is because my base position, my default, is very much pedagogic and learning led. And actually, my background has really pushed me to promote that personalized learning journey and building on prior knowledge. So joining the University of Portsmouth about 8 years ago, I was able to transform the view that videos are not just a supplementary piece of content, a nice to have if time allows, or a time saver if there was non-attendance, to something that is a critical learning resource. And that is something that's very much part of the module design process. So we've transitioned here at the university from a fixed room lecture capture model to a flexible content capture approach. And that included the rollout of Panopto and a subsequent culture change that has followed. And now we're at a point where we're trying to evolve even more and look at where video is very much seen as an intrinsic part of the standard learning experience.
Fantastic. I'm already intrigued and captivated. And Ian, from Panopto's perspective and yours, what are you seeing institutions grapple with right now when it comes to video learning?
Yeah, no, I love the question. Thank you, Ina. Before I answer, Shaun, I wanted to thank you again for being with us today and sharing your experiences. It's fantastic to be able to hear what you're going to share. I've been fortunate to hear it a few times as we've been preparing. So I think everyone who's listening is going to love it. But getting back to your question of what I am seeing institutions grapple with, I mean, a ton. I think no matter where you are in the world, there's some things that overlap and some that are perhaps unique to the geographic location. But accessibility is one of the first ones that comes to mind. There's different regulations, there's different challenges. There's more demand also for ways to engage with video, and then ask ourselves, how do we make that accessible? How do we make sure that we're creating an equitable learning environment for everyone? So that's a conversation I have with customers all the time. I see a lot of demand for personalization, so sometimes going hand in hand with accessibility, but we all learn differently. So how can we deliver auditory and visual knowledge in personalized ways that gets back to that equitable learning environment, and ultimately giving everyone the same chance to increase their retention and mastery of the information they're trying to learn. And then AI is everywhere. When you talk about what are we grappling with, how do we bring it into our institutions while maintaining data integrity, while not losing any of the rich knowledge that teachers, faculty, administrators are providing, security. Those are sometimes pain points, but then there's also grappling with, how can we use it to improve what we're doing? Can we do more content creation? Can we speed up editing, some of the administrative overhead tasks that AI might really be able to help with? So, those are some, I think, really big, large issues that are being discussed all around the globe right now.
Interesting. So it seems like we are moving away from passive learning content consumption, but we are going to talk so much about that. And Shaun, my first question is to you. So you mentioned this disconnect between what's being captured and what students actually need. Let's dig into that. So what assumptions do you think most institutions are making about how students use video?
I think the biggest myth is that students watch lectures back. We assume that they press play and watch linearly and make notes and that's their study session. But when you look at the analytics, and more importantly, when you actually talk to the students, that's not what's happening at all. Students are skipping, searching, they might rewatch a specific segment over and over again. They're trying to find that one explanation, that one diagram or one worked example that then they can apply in their learning. They might say that they've spent 45 minutes on a 90-minute recording, but we know that really only about 12 minutes is actually consumed. It's more a coping strategy than a revision strategy. This is reinforced by, I know as part of our team, as a central team, but also feedback from lecturers that they get repeated questions and emails about the same specific themes and requests for further content about topic X or topic Y. And we often hear there's a demand for more video and more video. But actually, maybe what we need to do, and maybe the question needs to be at the module design stage, really evaluating what's the purpose of the video that's there.
That's striking. Ian, when institutions come to Panopto, are they aware of those behaviors? Ian, you're muted. Yeah.
Yeah, sorry. It's I would say historically no, or they have a sense that something isn't working, but let's say they haven't connected the dots or spent the time to really dig into this. And I mean, just a few reasons that I see that have come up is lecture capture has historically been the primary use case. And it's kind of, as Shaun called out, the intention was that you're in the classroom, the teaching is delivered, it's recorded, and then you're going to go sit down and rewatch that entire video. And, as someone with ADD, I can tell you that getting me to sit down and watch a 30-minute video is hard. So a couple hours, that might take me all day to get through the whole thing. I also notice, and I do some research and think about this, especially with, having two young kids of my own, is the way that content is delivered, especially in social forums, is just getting smaller and shorter. And so it's also just, I think, reducing the overall learning attention span. And so again, when you had this historic lecture capture workflow built into everything you're doing, that's sometimes it's just not obvious that might, that behavior is there. And then the other thing that I think about is, faculty, they record this long lecture. And they're also asking, why aren't students watching the whole thing? Why are they only watching that 45-minute chunk? And sometimes it's because they're not armed with the data. And what's powerful about a platform like Panopto is it can show you where students are dropping off, where they're rewatching, what they're searching for. It's kind of giving you the map of, where is that learning moment that students are looking for. And it does create a challenge because faculty might concern that some learning is not being captured if you don't rewatch the whole thing. And then you add in these AI tools such as you press record, some third-party app is recording the lecture, it gives the student a summary, they didn't pay attention, they read the notes, so is that devaluing the learning? And what I go back to is kind of what Shaun was starting to get into, which is the real value, arm yourself with the data, and then the real value comes when institutions like Portsmouth take that data and ask, what does this tell us about the actual learning design? Students are telling us how they want to learn. How are we designing them to work with them?
Yeah, if you don't mind, just to add to this,
Yes.
I think it's very much no different to if you have a Moodle site, module Moodle site, or your equivalent VLE. Other VLEs are available. Putting all of your content or extensive resource on that site and that scroll of death. I think that there's the idea that putting everything on there so that it's at the students' fingertips there. It's like an educational blanket that covers everything. But without scaffolding and signposting or a clear reason why it's there, it's just not purposeful, and then it's not digested by the learners. And this applies to video. And the proof in the pudding is very much the eventual assessment outcomes that come from it. And it demonstrates a partial or a superficial understanding, effectively. So looking at this slide, it really captures what we're seeing. Students report like they feel like they've done the work because they've engaged with the video, but they've clicked the link and had it playing. But when we've asked them, there's often little retention. There's cognitive load involved in there. But if you're trying to navigate a long, poorly structured video, it's exhausting. It's not, if you actually think about it, it's not just time wasted, but if you think about it from a student's point of view, if you've got a 90-minute video, like your confidence is eroded and you're very anxious. Anxiety's increased because you're worried about all the stuff that's not going in, what you don't know. So we've got quite a tech-savvy slide here, but there are 4 clear points on here. I won't read it out. I'm not one of those read the slides verbatim here, but what I would say is that we need to really rethink the traditional long-form content style that we promote to students, and this includes video. That's quite, it's losing its grip on students currently, and it's quite distant from the modern learner. This explains the rationale behind moving direction, but it really needs a reflection on the purpose of videos for learning as a whole, I would say.
I, for one, love this slide. I think that it captures so many principles. Myers' principles are there, UDL is there. If you can make a screenshot, do it right now, but we are also going to follow up with the presentation as well. So let's talk about what students are actually trying to do when they turn on the video. Shaun, you've mentioned in your framework that students are trying to keep up, catch up, or stay engaged. Can you unpack that, please?
Yeah. So quite often video is just seen as a catch-up tool. You missed the session, so watch the recording. But students are using video for much more than that. Really, you could split them into 3 different groups, and they're not exclusive to these groups. They would quite often move between them. So first of all, you do have the students that miss the session, but then you also have students who are revisiting that material, and that's actually a good learning practice that you want to promote to your students. And then you also have students that are working from a distance and working asynchronously. So when you think about putting a video on your VLE, that you really need to capture that you need to keep engaged, catch up, stay engaged, covers all 3 types of these students, and you need to consider all of these things. So when we look at keeping up and following complex concepts, really what that means is structured assets that are logically sequenced. You've got captions and accessible formats that aid independent study so that they don't need to pester you with further emails for real-time support. Your catch-up side, yeah, everyone misses things, don't they? But if you've got time-stamped topics, you've got key concepts, reflective prompts, this really consolidates the learning that's happening. And then when we look at staying engaged, we're looking for that active engagement with interactive elements, whether that's quizzes, polls, meaningful framing. The whole point is why it matters, and it allows then staff to follow up and offer true additional support where it's needed, not just because something's been missed. The problem is when we design video as if it's just for catch-up, long, unstructured recording. It's not serving any of these needs well. The only purpose it really does is prove that we did the thing on a certain day and that content was delivered. Well, we don't deliver learning. Learning is not like Amazon or Uber Eats. It's not something to be delivered. It's something that needs to happen as an organic process.
I love that. And yeah, it just perfectly describes my attitude as well to delivered learning, because that's the phrase that we overuse, I guess. And yeah, I'm taking it with myself. I'm sorry, but yeah, Amazon or Uber Eats, that's going to be with me forever. So Ian, how does this align with what Panopto sees in the data?
Yeah, no, I love it. And yeah, Shaun, I'm with you. It's just not a check the box activity. But we see exactly the same patterns. And I'll also talk a little bit about so what Panopto is seeing, but also getting back to what Shaun was bringing up, and even some of my personal experience of that keep up, catch up, stay engaged. I get back to the learners in the data are telling us what they need, and they're going and finding solutions if it's not being provided. And it's been fascinating. But what we notice is that the highest engagement actually happens within like the first 48 to 72 hours, 2 to 3 days following content being published. It's really the first reinforcement time. It's fresh in the mind of the learner. They might be preparing for the next session. They might have a quiz or assessment coming up. They might just want to go revisit everything that they just learned the same way. I think when I was in school, I'd want to come out of a lecture and go try to get into the homework right after, because if I didn't, who knows when I would. But what's also interesting is, I think no surprise, the next bit of peak usage comes around assessment time, finals. And Shaun hinted at this a little bit too, of that pressure, that anxiety. I think students, they have a lot on their plate. It's more competitive than ever now to try to get through school with all the other priorities and extracurriculars and things that might be going on. And so being able to find that moment of learning, it's really hard in a 3-hour or 2-hour lecture that was just delivered, right? It's hard to stay engaged in that. It's hard to catch up. And so what we see is that the institutions that are really finding success they have more structured video assets, call it a 5 to 10 minute video segment, but even more importantly, clear titles, timestamps, the same way you might put your little sticky note in the book on the chapter of that one paragraph you want to read. Being able to do that with video and go directly back to that moment of learning is amazing. Students now are watching more completely. They're revisiting it confidently, and the analytics show that there's better mastery and comprehension of it. So to me, I think that's something that we see very clearly. And again, when it's a check the box activity, you don't see the outcomes in student success that we're all hoping to achieve. And as we add more structure, we see far better outcomes. And just getting into a little bit of what I'm seeing and hearing, though, as well of, I mentioned these third-party applications. We hear about things like Notebook LM, being able to go take static content and pile it all in and turn it into a podcast, turn it into a video, turn it into a quiz. And so one of the things that, when I'm talking to customers and hearing is, if our technology is not doing it, students are finding it somewhere else. And, that raises a whole bunch of other different challenges and issues and questions. And so having technology that can sit in the background, but allow students to keep up, to catch up, to stay engaged, drive better comprehension, that's what I'm seeing. That's what I'm seeing students tell us they want. And that's where I'm seeing, smart technology going to support.
I love that. And it's sort of intersects with the way we perceive content in real life. If you go on YouTube, nobody has enough time to watch every podcast in live. So you would normally go to a timestamp, just watch the, 5-10 minutes while you're driving to work, right? So it's something that students are expecting from us at this moment.
And I'll just say, by the way, as like a lifelong learner, an example, and some of you might be able to relate to this, I've got 2 young children, and so I don't want to watch a 30-minute video of how to install the car seat. I wanted the 5 minutes of how exactly to run the seatbelt through it, and being able to find that timestamp mark, incredibly helpful to sit through a whole 30-minute video. That's not what me as the learner in that situation wanted to go do. So I think it continues beyond the classroom and into just lifelong learning.
Absolutely. And that's what universities have to catch up at the moment, which brings us back to Shaun. So smart capture framework. This is brilliant, by the way. Shaun, could you just go ahead and introduce this framework to us?
So smart capture very much came out of these realizations about student behavior and needs. I should say quite clearly, it's not a policy. We're not telling faculties you must do X or you must do Y. The idea behind it is very much a design thinking framework that helps educators ask better questions about the video before they're going to create it. And we look at sort of cognitive load. When students are faced with a 90-minute recording, they're already making decisions before they press that play button. Do I have time for this? Where do I start? Where's the thing that I need to find? Again, it goes back to that cognitive load prospect that we were talking about. Looking at this slide, it really is at the heart of the framework. There's these 3 questions. Why is there this asset? Why is it now? And what will the student do with it? This should guide every video creation. They force us to think beyond just capturing the content, looking at the structure, and I won't again read this out, but there's key questions to it. Can students find what they need? Does it connect to assessments or real world contexts to make it meaningful? For it to be active, does it prompt thinking rather than watch it? And in terms of reflective, does it help students actually consolidate their understanding? And the targeted, is there a point to it? Is it designed to help me get to a specific outcome, or is it just the lecturer covering what needs to be covered on the syllabus? We don't want that. We want it to be purposeful, effectively.
That's right. That feels very practical. Now, Ian, how does the platform enable this principle?
Yeah, what I love about the smart framework here, Shaun, that you're sharing with us is first and foremost that it's not prescriptive, right? It's not, you're not in a box. You're not saying all videos must be 5 minutes with an interactive quiz, with some reflexive component. It's more of, I think, guardrails, or giving some direction, a little bit of like a compass heading, and it's that framework to make, and I'll emphasize this, intentional design choices. And so from Panopto's point of view, what we love about this is that Panopto supports this smart capture framework. It could be a 3-minute tutorial, a 15-minute worked example, has the quizzes, timestamp, being able to engage, can be targeted. And it's the technology that can sit in the background while the learning happens in the front. And so for us, the technology is supporting the adoption of a fantastic framework that drives better outcomes. And to me, that's a win-win for everybody. Most importantly, the student at the receiving end of this intentional content that's been designed.
Absolutely. Now, we learn through stories, so we need to put some examples behind. Let's go through each principle. And Shaun, could you start with the structured?
Yeah, of course. So structured is about helping students navigate and not just watch. At Portsmouth, we found students were rewatching long recordings, trying to find that one explanation. So faculty's good practice was to start chunking this content, breaking a 60-minute recording into 6 or 8 themed segments and with clear titles. We have a sort of a weekly or thematic approach to our VLE, and that sort of lended itself to that chunking methodology. But thinking about the structure, it needs to go beyond chunking. It's about signposting. So in this video, we might cover X, Y, and Z, but at 2 minutes 30, here is this explanation of the formula. Timestamp 5 minutes 45. It shows a worked example, so students can jump to exactly what they need. This structure and this sort of framing around the video content, it reduces that unnecessary rewatching, and students can confidently navigate the video there. If they can do that confidently, they'll learn more efficiently.
Right. And surely, Go
Oh,
ahead.
go ahead.
Ian, I was just about to ask that surely tech has a way to support this principle, and how do you see that?
Totally. Yeah, no, I love it and I couldn't agree more. Like having that organization and that trust of knowing where information is fantastic. In my school life, I think all of us in professional lives as well, there's nothing more frustrating than knowing you've seen a piece of content or a piece of information and you just can't find it and you're sitting there just searching and looking at this. So, from our platform perspective, Panopto makes this seamless. You can add your chapters, your timestamps, searchable captions. The AI powered elevated search helps tremendously to bring those moments of learning up to the learner at the time that they need them. Also, what I love is the ability to curate videos into sequences. So again, getting back to that, creating a guide so students can move through content in a progressive way. It's a platform that enables structure, but it also gives educators the ability to define what that structure looks like. And that gets back to that flexibility. Be intentional with your design, have technology that allows you to be flexible with how you want to do it.
Being intentional actually brings us to the next principle, am I right? So meaningful, making the why explicit. Shaun, could you give us some context on that?
Yeah, so this is where we connect the video to purpose effectively. Students engage more when they understand why this asset matters, how it connects to their assessment, their field, their future practice, possibly future employment, even at the university here. So I've put an example on this slide that we had instructors creating screen recordings of their marking process. So this isn't just about showing the marks, it's actually walking through their thinking, going, here's where you lost the marks because the argument needed more evidence, or it might be, here's where you did excellently with your critical analysis. So feedback from the students was that this was incredibly meaningful because it wasn't just the feedback on the text. It was an insight into the assessment criteria and the thought process of the marker themselves. I should say, again, Ian's mentioned the trigger word AI a few times, but here it does also counter that concern that maybe feedback is automatically generated or AI has produced it quickly. This is showing that it's authentic and the amount of time and thought that the marker's putting into generating that feedback, and that gets more buy-in from the student to the assessment process.
Totally. No, Shaun, I just wanted to jump in right after that because you hit the nail on the head for me. Also, when I get that intentional feedback, I am more inclined to go back and ask follow-up questions because I know that the individual who left that feedback or engaged with me in that way actually, let's say consumed what I was putting out there so I can have a real conversation. It wasn't just
That's it.
Yeah. And so I love that, right? And that's important. Like now all of a sudden we have two-way engagement and learning happens. You feel more comfortable, you feel safe, you feel trusted, you feel that you can ask questions where you're not a master. And so it's a super powerful use case. The ability, in Panopto to record personalized feedback at scale or at an individual one-to-one level, whether it's screencasting, comments, actually bringing up, an assignment, whatever it may be, and being able to record over that and say, here, and here is what I would do differently, or here, and here is where you excelled. And that's compelling, excuse me. Students tell us that reports leads to higher satisfaction with the video feedback than text or written comments, because again, you hear the tone, the emphasis, the connotation, and you just feel more connected to your instructor. So while AI can help in certain capacities, it's so important to show the human element of learning. And I think that this framework and then having technology that supports it is super critical.
Absolutely. And I love that Shaun and Ian mentioned continuously AI trigger words. So we saved the best for the last. Stay tuned. We are going to cover that topic as well, for better or worse. Kidding, for better, definitely. So also one tiny reminder, we are going to reply all the questions at the end of the session. So feel free to drop any comments that you wish to cover right now, but we will wait until the end of the session because we've got so much to cover still. So let's talk about active learning. Shaun, you've mentioned that watching isn't enough.
Yeah. So learning improves when video prompts action, thinking, deciding, applying. It's not just a passive process. So at Portsmouth, we've embedded H5P interactive elements into our standard digital practice. So quizzes, hotspots, branching scenarios, they're all directly intertwined with video. But we could go even simpler than that. You could have with a prompt. So one example I could give is criminal psychology, where students watch clips of a witness testimony, and then they might answer multiple choice questions about misinformation or memory reliability. The video part isn't actually the learning there. It's the stimulus for thinking, and then it almost flips the classroom. So when they go to their next webinar, seminar, whatever it may be, you can actually spend time talking about those concepts. You can talk about empathy with witnesses and ethical implications, real world applications. You're not talking about necessarily the video itself, because students have arrived prepared for that learning experience. Another example here, I've put a screenshot here of the kinetics lab, is teaching lab procedures. So students watch short videos demonstrating equipment use, and then they actually put it into action and try it themselves. The reason I put this one is because when you say lab procedures, people think white coats and microscopes. It's not just that. Like the screenshot here is from sport and exercise biomechanics lab, but it could equally be the AR/VR lab in our creative and cultural industries faculties. What I'm essentially getting at is it's immediately evident who's engaged with those videos and who didn't. Not as a gotcha, not to tell them off if they didn't, but as a safety and learning readiness issue. And that's quite crucial when you're using equipment or you're doing certain practices. It's also crucial for our students when they go out into the field on placement, or we also have a number of degree apprenticeship students who do their university degree alongside working in industry. So that is quite a crucial resource for that.
Yeah. No, Shaun, I hear this from a number of other institutions as well who have really been leading into this or might have more vocational, let's type like parts of their institution. And that readiness aspect is fantastic. The ability to consume, but then also I hear sometimes too, then record themselves, applying whatever might be in their lab of the world, let's call it, and be able to send it back, getting back then to that meaningful feedback that we talked about as well. So you can kind of see the frameworks already connecting. In a Panopto's world, active learning through the ability to have embedded quizzes, discussion prompts, video assignments, where students, as I mentioned, can record their own responses. And, then you have technology that's tracking completion through quiz scores, which, gives us some indication of comprehension and faculty getting a visibility into who's being engaged. And then as a result, who might need support. I really agree with Shaun. It's not a gotcha, like, oh yeah, you didn't do it. It's more of that readiness. Who needs support? Where are you at in your learning journey? And it's not just about throwing in a quiz, for example, or an assessment for the sake of it. It's about being intentional and designing for the cognitive engagement that you want to get. So again, yeah, don't ask questions just for the sake of it, hey, did you watch every little bit in this? It's, are you answering the questions that are going to actually indicate whether or not you are mastering the topic or the learning piece that's being presented? I think that's what becomes really important through this active aspect of the framework.
So intentional knowledge check is becoming the core of this principle. I probably would have 10 more follow-up questions, but we have to move on to the next principle, so reflective. How do you turn exposure into understanding, Shaun?
So reflection is the bridge between content and comprehension. It's helping students consolidate what they've seen and connect it to what they already know. So one example we've got here is we use video for reflective synchronous professional conversations. So we have a Teachwell program, which is a credit-bearing postgrad CPD program that we offer to teaching staff, but it might also be learning support tutors, anyone who's interested in education across the university. So they do a live professional conversation, and the instructors record this reflection of the student about their teaching practice. So that video in itself not only assists practically with the marking process and external verifications, but also allowing students to have access to this. They can reflect on their own reflections, if that makes sense. So they have to write a reflective portfolio after this about the whole course as a whole, and that act of articulating their thinking on video prompts deeper reflections. So we've seen students the value in that recap asset, short summary videos or student created videos, those reflections. The prompt here is not to just repeat what's happened, but to elaborate and go deeper effectively. It promotes reflection as like a continuous professional practice. And that's something we want to promote. I mean, we're talking about a staff course here effectively, but we want to promote that in all of our students to actually think about the learning that's taking place and then their place within that learning.
Yeah, no, Shaun, I love this. I wish I had been doing more of this myself back when I was in grade school, because I know it would have helped. One of the things that I think about is note-taking features that we offer, which support that reflection really well. And really what it brings me back to, I mentioned earlier, being able to put your little Post-it note in the book and go back to that point you want to be in. As a student, being able to take that timestamp note and being able to link back to a specific moment in the video is really, really powerful. For me, as I think about this, you're building your own study guide in video content. All of a sudden now, when you're in that, assessment week and you're stressed and you're cramming, and rather than, going to some third party outside sources trying to search to find an answer, you've already timestamped your notes that you've left for yourself, or you've created a student submission. Students recap their own information. They can go back and find it. That learning moment, that's actually the content that they should be mastering, not having to go outside, where the knowledge lives to look for answers. I think that just becomes another really important part of the reflection that you get at is, allowing students to become creators drives a deeper level of reflection, deeper level of mastery, and great outcomes.
Fantastic. And it feels like, well, AI is a big elephant in the room. Am I right? Everything that you've been talking about, Ian and Shaun, feels like the next step. You bring those notes, you put them in AI, you create flashcards, and then just the imagination is endless, whatever you can do. And students are actively using it. So if we are not, then that's something to definitely work on. Now, finally, we are moving to the last principle. So targeted, designing for outcomes, not just coverage. Shaun, what do you have for us here?
The targeted part is very much about relevance and focus. Instead of trying to cover everything in a single video, maybe ask the students, what do they actually need to succeed in this specific context? So the example I've got here is at Portsmouth, we have a piece of equipment called Learning Glass, which is effectively replicates what a lecturer would put on a whiteboard, like I've got behind me. That's not on purpose, by the way, it's just that. But in a digital sense, we can capture that via video and then produce these quite poppy learning videos about various different topics. But maths and pharmacology here really targeted students who are struggling with exams on particular concepts. So they targeted 2 or 3 minute videos, laser focused explanations, and these were a vital source of learning material before an exam. So instead of rewatching they had hour-long lectures, they had captured Zooms that they did before, but instead of those things, they had targeted explanations, and they used this, and because of that, we saw improved performance on those specific concepts. So the added benefit, as well as improved student performance, but actually it reduced time and workload from supporting services and the lecturer, reduced emails asking for clarification. When something's targeted, it actually answers the student's actual question up front, which saves time, reduces that anxiety about whether I'm doing it wrong.
Yeah, I love that question. I've asked it to myself many times, am I doing this wrong? And I just needed more of the SMART framework. I've talked about this a few times throughout this last 40 minutes, Shaun, and what you're getting at is, students are looking for the moment of learning more and more today. We're more and more accustomed and conditioned to, finding that perfect moment, that clip, that specific something. And so, when you compile that with, I said a few times, the pressure that, a learner might be feeling, in whether it be assessment week, whether it just be whatever reason, right? Being able to find targeted information that's focused, as you said, that's super helpful. Again, it gets back to building that trust and willingness to engage. And this is also where the analytics, in my opinion, becomes super powerful. A platform like Panopto being able to show you what videos are being watched the most, which segments are getting rewatched, what are they searching for, or where are they searching? This really, if you're leveraging it, it helps faculty target their efforts, create videos that answer the questions that students are asking. Also go back and ask yourself, why do they keep rewatching this part of the video? Is it really good? Is it really confusing, right? These are the important intentional questions that when you're considering your learning design have to be, asked out loud and worked through. And for us to learn from. And I'd also say, if you're doing targeted, video, it adds more scalability to the institution's, video strategy. For one, you're not going to have, thousands of hours of content that no one's watching, no one's looking at. And so you have a better asset management. You have more targeted video that students are going to go back and engage with because it's the piece of information they're looking for. So better overhead, reduction of overhead, I should say, for admins, more focused learning content coming from our faculty, better engagement for the students. I think it's a win across the board.
So it sounds like less can genuinely be more if it's well targeted, right? Okay, so moving on.
I'd say yes.
Sorry. I was a little bit distracted because I was looking at the questions. I'm not going to lie. Yes, quality over quantity. We'd rather have 10 well-designed videos than 100 hours of unstructured recordings, definitely.
Yeah, absolutely. So Shaun, we've talked a lot about student experience and individual faculty practice. Could you speak to how this helps different types of learners?
Yeah, so we want videos to create flexible pathways without forcing students to rewatch everything. We don't want to disadvantage students in any way, but we need to appreciate that different students use videos differently, whether it's missing a session and needing to catch up, or whether they're in revision mode or working asynchronously or need clear structure or accessibility. When a video is well designed, it needs to serve all of these needs without requiring separate versions. Structure, signposting, and targeted content works for everyone. It's very much the application of universal design in action.
Great.
Love it. Yeah. I was just going to add, as I think about this is, this is where, video becomes infrastructure. It's not the backup plan. To say it succinctly, when students can rely on well-designed video assets to support their learning throughout, the term, the course, the program, not just when they miss a session, it's not just that backup plan piece. It really does change how we approach our studies. And, I'm preparing for a kind of a graduate course myself, and I couldn't agree more right now with how I am engaging with video to help move me through my own learning journey, while also working and all the other things going on. So in institutions, in my view, they see everything I talked about before: retention, assessment results, student satisfaction, and student mastery of what they're trying to learn. So again, it's kind of that win across the board.
I love that you talk about examples, and I would want to get even more closely to the ones that you are able to share. So speaking of Portsmouth, how does this scale institutionally, Shaun?
So yeah, to talk from a central management point of view. So that shift from capturing everything to designing purposefully has been transformative at systems level. So what we're seeing is consistent video quality across the programs, but reduced storage costs, because we don't need to capture everything, and we're not archiving everything indefinitely. So there's better faculty workload management, because we're creating smart videos often in a faster way, rather than creating these long unstructured recordings that then need editing or transcribing or sort of certainly rewatching all the way through to ensure it's appropriate for my learners. And also we've previously, I'm not going to say tried and failed, but we've been really sort of beating the drum of accessibility, and it's quite hard in a time. Well, obviously everyone cares about accessibility, but when you have time poor creators, shall we say, and it's seen as an additional sort of stress that's placed on using videos. By having shorter smart videos, it actually helps us meet those accessibility standards with captions, transcript. Navigationable structure aren't just nice to haves anymore. It's sort of baked into the whole way we use video at the university now. And that's a complete culture shift, I would say.
That's right. Now, Ian, coming back to you. So could you, in a nutshell, describe how the SMART model that Shaun given us an incredible dive into supports these principles? So from the methodological, pedagogical point of view, how does tech enables us to keep track of
Totally. It's the right question, and the framework is fantastic. Where I would put a point of emphasis is that, my view and our view is that technology should amplify great pedagogy. It shouldn't be dictating it. Panopto was purpose-built with this in mind, and every feature that we build into Panopto, the intention behind it is, from automated captions to analytics dashboards, is designed to enable to kind of, hit that thoughtful video design that Shaun and his team are doing at Portsmouth, to be able to allow any creator to, work with this SMART framework and not feel confined or limited by certain things, but instead actually be able to be incredibly successful building fantastic content that talks about, that structure and that meaningfulness, being active, reflexive, and targeted, and having technology that allows you to deliver this, whether it be at scale, personalized, and it sits there in the background while that great pedagogy is happening in the foreground. I mentioned a few things, but are just across the board, the video feedback tools and annotations, being able to embed quizzes and assignments, the student note-taking and playlists, which I did see a question pop up, and I'll get to it again, but I mentioned Notebook LM, and thinking about, in Panopto's world, how can we offer some of these augmented materials that students are really yearning for. And then getting down to targeted, the analytics that show, where are the students engaging, where are they not, and then using that to get back to that intentional learning design, tackling that challenge. Those are all things that I see Panopto's platform, doing a fantastic job at, if I say so myself, and really supporting this framework.
Yeah, absolutely. And with all the AI expectations, there is so much to talk about, especially in the space of ed tech. Now, Ian, where do you see this heading?
Yeah, so for me, there's a few things that I think about. One is like AI is accelerating everything that we've discussed, right? Students have higher expectations for search and for personalization and instant access, to really get the information that they need when they want it. And I think some of that is because of how they're interacting with technology outside of the classroom in their day-to-day personal lives. And while I totally agree with Shaun, learning is on Amazon, it's not Uber Eats, it's not a check the box delivery. We have to also know that outside of the institution, I want this delivered, boom, boom, here it comes, right? So there's that immediate kind of demand. And we're trying to find, though, the right solutions working with our customers to, deliver AI in the right way, in ways that help drive that great pedagogy I mentioned, but also doesn't compromise, the institution's amazing IP, the data integrity, making sure that faculty feel confident that students are still learning the really important materials that have been, really thought through. They're not just going to a Google search and pulling some information from who knows where and plugging it in. So I see that one of the areas that we have to tackle. And at Panopto, for us, trying to think about what's going to be valuable, what's going to move the needle. We're elevating our AI-powered search, automated captioning, intelligent recommendations based only on the information and knowledge that's within your system. So now being able to provide students with instant answers to, what did the instructor say about derivatives, or, show me all the examples of XYZ based on, this part of the video. And being able to pull from captions, transcripts, it really gives you that learning moment that we've talked about so many times over the last close to here an hour. But the core principle always remains: technology has to amplify great pedagogy. It can't replace it. For us, we talk about the learning happens at the front, the technology fades in the back. And personally, I believe that institutions such as Portsmouth that are leading with learning design, they're going to be using AI the most effectively. AI can make the SMART principles even more powerful, but it better structured through auto chaptering and all those other things, accessibility, instant language. But it's by having that thoughtful framework at the foreground and then bringing AI into the workflow, not trying to jam things into what AI is doing for you. I think that's another really important takeaway.
Yeah. Just to add in from our perspective, like the AI tools are really exciting because they can reduce the technical barriers about creating a well-designed video. But the design thinking, the why this asset, why now, it comes from educators ultimately understanding their students' needs, their students themselves, and their discipline themselves. The only thing I would add here is, like, we do have to be careful. Like, we're in an era where authenticity is a thing. Like, there's skepticism around AI. We need to consider, to me, what I would say a good example of AI is it working hand in hand with good quality human created learning resources. If it can speed that process up, that's great, but it's a collaboration, it's not a shortcut. We want to use that collaboratively to enhance learning ultimately.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I don't have a resource at hand, but somebody just mentioned to me that 80% with ChatGPT finds is from Reddit. So being responsible, aware takes another layer in this aspect. But moving on to the conclusions, if there is 3 things that you would want our audience to go with, what are those, Shaun, Ian?
Yeah, so they might say it, but students don't need more video. They need better designed videos. So stop thinking about covering it all. Start thinking about the learning that's going to take place. Small little changes can have a big impact. You don't need to reinvent the wheel or overhaul everything. Just start with the structure and signposting, and actually what it'll do is it'll shine a big spotlight on the really good quality learning materials that you've put all the effort into already. And then thirdly, our smart capture isn't a policy, it's about a mindset. Why are we doing this thing? why now, and what will the students do with it? And those questions guide ultimately what we're trying to design with the learning that's taking place.
Yeah, and what I'd add to it, Ina, is echoing what Shaun said. The institutions that are going to be realizing the most success with video learning are the ones that are, again, not confining themselves or constraining themselves, but instead looking at that learning design challenge. And, video is a core, crucial part of being able to elevate, but they're not trying to solve a technology challenge. Technology comes into play to support the learning design that's intentionally being worked through, as Shaun's spoken about many times throughout this conversation. We want to partner with educators who are thinking deeply about student experience, and we want to continue to bring technology to them that can sit in the background and support that learning design through video that they are intentionally designing. And that's where I really see the future of video learning heading, pedagogically driven, technology empowered. I think it's a good way to put it.
That's right. With that, I suggest to open the Q&A session. So you're going to have a QR code to connect with our speakers, because I'm sure that we have a couple of minutes left and we're not going to be able to cover all of the questions. We're going to try our best though, but please feel free to connect with the speakers using the QR code I mentioned via LinkedIn or with anyone at Panopto. We are here to help you. So let's go through some of the questions. I saw one of them regarding the presentation, if it will be available after the recording. Sure. So we've got question from Jonathan Wade. Thank you so much for being here. You've written to us lots of food for thought. So I think this one is for you, Shaun. I agree with the idea of hitting the important parts and not giving them extraneous materials. I'm sorry, I probably didn't read that right, but yeah, English not the third language. But one of the things that students need to learn is to focus their attention. If we coddle students by telling them what they don't have to pay attention to, we'll just give them the details. They will go into their jobs unable to attend to the complex and wicked issues that face all of us every day in our jobs. So Shaun, what do you think of that?
Yeah, I think you really touch on a really important aspect about those sort of lifelong learning lessons that actually go in alongside the subject matter learning that happens at university. And it's often something that we deal with our learning support tutors and things that come up that those skills are perhaps it's like a brick wall. Some of those bricks are missing with the modern day student. They just don't necessarily have those skills. So using video as a mechanism to signpost or focus their attention, I think is a powerful tool. We're promoting that learning, that learning behavior. So if we start focusing, the hope is that they then will start doing that practice themselves by actually, it's almost like reading a book chapter and highlighting the text that you need. With video, it's getting those time I've watched this once, time stamping bits that I need, or that maybe my peers or my lecturer have said, hey, watch this bit, this will help with your write-up on this topic. I think if you model that learning behavior and get students actually practicing it, then yeah, they can take it on to ultimately their jobs. And if we coddle them and we just spoon feed specific content to them, video or otherwise, they're never going to learn those skills. So I think it's quite an important question and point raised by Jonathan there.
That's right. Thank you for answering that. So we've got a question from Jody Deller. Thank you for being here. So Ian, this one's for you. I think you already mentioned that notebook LM. Does Panopto have any plans to integrate with this type of features?
Yeah, I love this question. It's something that we are certainly researching and thinking about. There's a couple of points I'll hit on it. One is, yes, we see this demand to bring different pieces of flat content into the ecosystem and do more with it. Just personal example, I mentioned a graduate course I'm preparing for. I live somewhere where driving happens a lot. So I've been actually creating podcasts based on, flat content and doing this. And so at Panopto, we're talking about this a lot. What we're also, though, always trying to make sure that we're being thoughtful of is where is that data coming from? And is it the right learning material? It's not just open sources that came from, pulling from Reddit or LinkedIn and sources that haven't really been verified or substantiated. But yes, in short, it's absolutely something that we're researching. We're spending a lot of time looking at, talking to customers about. There's no hard deadline on when it would be, but as I said, we're keeping a really close pulse on how are students engaging with content, what type of learning styles are they bringing in to institutions, and how can we be there to meet them with what they're looking for.
Yeah, absolutely. We've got another question on integration about Eli interactive features from Kevin Hartman, like branching and hotspots, brilliant features to engage your learners through the video, again, active watching. And there's a question if it's upcoming. Kevin, all I can say is stay tuned with us. No spoilers ahead. So we've got, I suggest that we have the final question. We are already a little bit above the time. So Carrie asks, and this one we can answer for 3 hours at least. So I invite you to be as concise as possible. Do you find that students watch videos instead of reading textbook articles, or do they use it in addition to reading materials? So Shaun, that's probably to you.
Yeah. So I think it's important to suggest that videos are not necessarily a replacement for reading textbooks or articles, and some subjects they actually have to do those things. It's part of the requirements by the professional bodies. But what it might be is your way to breathe new life into a topic that ultimately they can then do wider reading into. It's almost you're meeting that, because so much content is consumed via video these days. Actually doing a short TikTok style 30-second clip on an article that then prompts them to go read further is quite a powerful mechanism to get them to engage in that learning material.
Absolutely.
It's got something else to add to that.
Highly inviting you to engage with Shaun. He's got brilliant perspective. Ian also, so please feel free to connect on LinkedIn. Let's keep the conversation going. It's so important, especially in the context of modern learning right now. Thank you all so much for joining us today, and a big thank you for our speakers, Ian and Shaun, for the practical insights and the honest example that you all shared. Now, the key takeaway is simple but powerful. It's not about creating more video, just like Shaun said. It's about designing video that actually helps students to move forward. We hope that today's session gave you a few ideas that you can take back and apply right away. Panopto will be here to support you with that. Thanks again for your time and engagement. We'll share recording and follow-up resources shortly. Have a great rest of the day.
Hey, Ina, just before you hang up, I just wanted to make sure that we got to give you a great thank you for being a wonderful host. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much.
All right. Take care, everyone. Thank you.
Thank you. Bye.
Bye.